It's 2004 and there's a long line of people at my teller window. I work part-time at the bank while going to school full-time, studying economics and finance. I've always been good at math and I quite enjoy it. In fact, it's this love of math that's drawn me to finance and then to economics. My courses have gotten quite advanced lately and they demand a lot of my time between all the homework and the studying and the research papers and the typing and the presentations to prepare for. It's a lot. So I've had to reduce my hours at work. And as a result, I'm only working a couple hours a day for a few days a week. And that means sometimes I come in and work for 2 hours or 3 hours. And I come in right in the middle of midday rush. And that's kind of what happened today. So I get there and I start working. And even though there's a dozen people waiting for me, I'm working with a particularly troubling client or customer. And this customer is pleading his case. He's telling me that he wants his overdraft fees reversed. And then he goes on to tell me the story about how it's just a fluke that all of those checks came in yesterday and he got paid today. In fact, he's got his check here in front of me and he wants to deposit the check, but he wants to make sure those fees are going to get wiped out because otherwise, he doesn't get that money. Right? If he's got $100 in overdraft fees, the first $100 of his check goes to pay back those fees. He's trying to avoid that. Now, unfortunately for him, I've heard this same song and dance before. I hear this several times a day. Hey, something happened. Woe is me. Please help me. I screwed up, but I need some help. Now, unfortunately, I can't help everybody because if I help one person, then I have to help everybody. If I help everybody, then that negates the point of having the rules. And if we don't have those rules in place, the motivations and the incentives get all wonky. So unfortunately, I can't help this person. He gets angry. He yells at me. He screams off. That's just a Thursday for me. Now, 2 weeks later, I find myself in the exact same situation that customer was in line at my bank, waiting to plead my case. Now remember, my hours got totally reduced, but I didn't reduce my lifestyle. I didn't reduce my expenses. So I managed to go in 2 weeks from silently judging this person for not understanding the math of personal finance, not being responsible with his money, to 2 weeks later doing the exact same thing. And I know the math. I know the industry. I work in the industry. This is quite embarrassing. I had all these checks come in on payday. So not only did I find myself getting a lot of overdraft fees, I happened to do this on payday. So now I have to try to survive 2 weeks with a negative balance. This is particularly frustrating and it's really embarrassing. And this is why I find out that there's more to finance than just math. There's a behavioral component to it. There's an emotional component to it. There's a motivational component to it. Find out more right after this. Hey, it's Derek Hagan, financial therapist, financial life planner, here with another Money Health presentation where we're going to talk about money and emotions. Okay, so money and emotions go hand in hand, although it seems like they shouldn't. Now, financial success is going to depend on understanding that very fact. You can find some success by shoving your emotions away or doing this idea that I learned in college, or that I thought I learned in college, which was you have to make rational decisions. So we avoid our emotions when we make decisions. We develop spreadsheets so that we're following the calculator, we're following the formula instead of having to make this decision all the time with whatever's floating around in our head. But if we understand our emotions, that's going to lead to better success. We're going to be less likely to react in an inappropriate way. Now, notice this does not say give in to your emotions. This does not say make emotional decisions. This does not say make a decision when your emotions are through the roof. This just says understand your emotion. Understand which emotion you're feeling. Now, this idea that it's a math problem, you can be forgiven for thinking that. I thought that, and I worked at the bank and studied finance and economics at the same time. Now, information is necessary, but it's not sufficient. Matter of fact, it's not even half of what you need. You do need information, but that needs to rest on a solid foundation of other stuff. like your beliefs and your motivations and your feelings and your emotions and your money scripts. So information is important. What we call information part of exterior finance. That's your strategies, your nuts and bolts, the mechanics of money. That's the stuff that applies to everybody. Other stuff, what I'm calling other stuff here, a solid foundation of interior finance, that's where this other stuff goes. Interior finance is interior to you. That's your stories, your beliefs that you tell yourself. It's your relationship with money. So information is necessary. It's just simply not enough. Now, it's layered on top of that is the difficulty that arises by understanding that money comes in judgments. Of the 6 basic financial needs, belonging, autonomy, safety and security, self-expression, connection, significance and purpose. Of the 6 basic needs that we have, 2 of those are related to our tribe. Remember, our genes were passed down from generation to generation. If you go back enough generations, our ancient ancestors lived in tribes. And 2 of those 6 basic needs, belonging and connection, help understand why judgment is such a problem when it comes to money. Now, belonging means that we're a part of a group. We belong to the tribe. We fit in somewhere. Connection is about having interpersonal relationships. Now, if we were ever kicked out of the tribe, if we were ever kicked out of the group, either because we couldn't get along with others, we had no connection, or we just didn't fit in, we didn't belong, that meant death. You're not going to survive very long outside of the tribe. So we had to become very adept at seeing what other people thought of us. We're very good at understanding what people think of us. And we don't like being judged. So with money, this is why we don't talk about it. You open up your mouth and talk about money, somebody's going to judge you. And we don't like that. We avoid it because we hate it. We hate it. Even if it's good stuff, you can be, I have this great brand new car that I bought for cash, and it's a convertible sports car. There's going to be those people that say, well, wouldn't that be nice? And you're going to be judged for that. Now that's first world problems. You're also going to be judged if you drive a mid-level car. You're going to be judged if you drive an old car. You're going to be judged if you live in this big fancy house on a cul-de-sac. You're going to be judged if you live in a Rambler in an older part of town. You're going to be judged if you live in an apartment. You're going to be judged if you live in a trailer and travel around the country. You're going to be judged no matter what. And that's unfortunate. But those judgments lead to different emotions. Now, it's easy to think that something happens and then we feel something about it. That something happens and then we do something. That's not how it happens. That's how it feels. But in between there's a belief. There's how we feel about it. Okay, so something happens, we have a belief about that, and then there's 2 consequences. There's a behavioral consequence, we do something, or there's an emotional consequence, we feel something. Emotions live in this consequence, but it's important to investigate that belief. Really quick idea here. I was listening to a podcast with Malcolm Gladwell as the guest, author Malcolm Gladwell, Blink and Outliers, Tipping Point, things like that. The host asked him, don't you get irate when the lines at the grocery store get really long? And Malcolm Gladwell said, no, I couldn't care. I don't even notice. The host said, I can't understand how you could notice. Why don't you consistently calculate if there's a better line you can get into? It doesn't make any sense. And Gladwell says, I don't know, man. We just must live in different universes. So in this case, we've got the same adverse event. Long lines at the grocery store. 2 wildly different consequences. One person gets irate and goes crazy. The other person calmly goes about his day. The same A led to 2 totally different C's in 2 different people. That's because they have different beliefs about what a long line at the grocery store means. One person has a belief that I'm the most important person here and I should not have to wait in line at the grocery store. The other person said, lines are a part of life, and while I'm waiting, I can contemplate, or I can meditate, or I can plan my day, or I can fiddle around on my phone. Whatever happens, the belief is what drives the emotion, not what happens to us. Now that's important. Now there's a book, How Emotions Are Made. You should definitely check out this book. It's kind of long, so you might find a TED Talk or something like that. Lisa Feldman Barrett is the author, and she talks about how we're awful at understanding what emotion we have. Awful at it. She's done studies where they try to induce a negative feeling, and they ask people what they're feeling, and half the people say I'm feeling anxious, and half the people I'm saying depressed, feel that they're depressed. Now, this is not perfect, but you can think of it like those are opposites. I'm anxious and I'm depressed. But the same thing happened. So half these people thought that they were anxious, half the people thought they were depressed. And what she realized was that people don't know how to label their emotions. They just know, I feel crappy, I feel bad. And so we'll attach whatever bad means to, yeah, anxious, sure, that must be what I'm feeling, because I know I feel like crap. Oh, depressed? Sure, that must be what I'm feeling, because I know I feel like crap. Sad? Sure, that must be what I'm feeling, because I know I feel like crap. Angry, and on and on and on we can go. But it's helpful to understand what those emotions are. So slowing down and understanding, okay, what happened? And then, what do I think about it? What am I telling myself? And then, is my reaction appropriate based on that belief? So for example, in the book, The Resilience Factor, the authors talk about different BC, belief consequence links that can be made. So for example, if your belief is that somebody violated your rights, that will lead to anger. If you believe, if your B is that somebody, or that you violate somebody else's rights, that will lead to guilt. If your belief is that something is going to happen in the future, that will be fear. If you believe that something was taken away from you, this will be sadness. Okay, these are pretty well paired up. And there's room for error, of course. But sometimes we'll get irate, because anger has several sub components to it as well. So sometimes we'll get irate for something that doesn't really make sense. Is getting irate appropriate based on my belief that I shouldn't have to wait in grocery store lines, for example? Taking a look at these beliefs, challenging the beliefs, that will help you start to learn what emotion it is you're actually feeling, what feeling it is you're actually feeling. And once you know that, that's more information for you. And you can use that going forward when you're making financial decisions and any kind of decision, to be quite honest. And by slowing down, you grow that space between stimulus and response, or between stimulus and action. Because if you act too quickly, you're reacting. You're in reactive mode. And then you find that you're like, oh man, I just made it worse. This is awful. But if you can grow that space, get curious about your thinking, then you can choose the appropriate response. You can say, okay, well, that actually wasn't so bad. So money is emotional, but understanding what that means to you will help you. Like sometimes you don't just feel bad or stressed out about money. Sometimes many of us avoid doing financial planning or any kind of planning with our finances because we know it makes us feel bad. But that's not good enough. Does it make you feel afraid? Does it make you feel sad? Does it make you feel nervous? Does it make you feel angry? When you better understand what the emotion is, you can embrace the emotion, you can make a better financial decision going forward. You only have one life. Live intentionally.